Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Social Marketing Academy. I am your host, Christopher Tompkins. I'm really excited about today's episode. I'm always excited because I love talking to my friends and my partners. I have a goodie one for you today. It's my good friend Brenda Christensen. She is a PR marvel. Oh my God, you got to hear her resume. It's like outstanding. She's going to give you some really, really great PR advice on this episode. And we're going to answer some of your hot burning questions that you have sent through via social media. Thank you for all of those. So I'm going to tell you more about Brenda and then bring her on so you can all meet her in just a minute. But for all of you that are here for the first time, welcome. You coming back? Thank you for coming back and watching and listening to us. The Social Marketing Academy comes out once a week, every Thursday evening. But don't worry about watching our stream. You can catch everything on demand as well. If you subscribe to our podcast channel, our podcast is available everywhere that you get them: Overcast, Apple, Stitcher, wherever you like to listen to your podcast, we are there. And also, you can see the video component of this, our live conversation, on YouTube as well, Facebook, and other places as well on social. If you have a question that you'd like to have covered in a future episode of our show, I want you to get in touch with me. You can get in touch with me by going to my agency's website, which is the Go Agency. The Go Agency, we are a digital marketing agency. We have lots of different services. If you're interested in anything digital marketing, give me a shout. But if you have a question that you'd like to answer, have me answer, or have one of my guests answer in a future episode, please go to the website, gosalesandmarketing.com, click on one of the links in the upper right-hand corner, and then DM me, tweet me, message me, comment, whatever you like. I really want to hear what you want to learn about. All of these episodes of the Social Marketing Academy are built almost like a kind of like an FAQ on different topics that can really help you understand how you can utilize this for your own business, no matter what industry, no matter what level of understanding that you have. Everything that all of the people that are going to be coming on and we're going to have as a guest on the Social Marketing Academy are members of my extended network. So they are all people that I trust, that I've vetted, and I've worked with personally. So I know that they all have really valuable things to offer in terms of information and expertise. So that's what the show is all about. So please take a look at the archived episodes as well. Lots of great information there. Also, while you're at gosalesandmarketing.com, don't ignore the blog. We have wonderful articles that we post there on a regular basis on a myriad of topics, digital marketing. So you can definitely learn a lot and level up your understanding. Also, there's a free e-course right now on a pop-up. Go ahead and grab that if you're interested as well. There's lots of freebies there. Please take advantage of them. So let's get into today's show. We're going to be talking to Brenda Christensen. Now, Brenda, we've worked together on many projects, but let me tell you just a little bit about her, okay? Brenda is the CEO of Stellar Public Relations and a world leader in public and investor relations, branding, funding, and corporate guidance with direct, attributable growth worth over millions of dollars. This is truth. Brenda, with her over 30 years of experience in high-tech corporate communications and public relations, successfully helps prestigious companies and startup businesses to create and manage their global messaging campaigns for more returns and profits. She's an absolute dream to work with. The results that she gets for companies are phenomenal. I mean, just for some of the companies that we're collaborating right now, she's helped them win major awards that have really leveled up their public perception. But I know that you have tons of questions that I have calibrated and ready to go. So I'm just going to bring Brenda on now so she can join us on the call and welcome her on to the Social Marketing Academy. So she's connecting right now. Here she is. Hi, Brenda. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
No problem whatsoever. I was just telling everybody all about you, all about your history, just to kind of help people understand what you do and what your specialty area is. What can you just explain a little bit about your experience in your own words?
Sure. I like to explain it to people who have no idea of any marketing concepts or anything. And a lot of people understand actors and celebrities from Hollywood,
Mhm.
So I tell people I'm like an agent, but I work for companies instead of instead of celebrities. Yeah. I help make companies famous.
And it's the truth. I was saying as part of your intro that we're working on. We collaborate on lots of different projects, and you know, just it's been amazing to see you help companies win these major awards that have just like helped them level up their credibility and visibility in the public space. It's really I'm excited to hear your answer to some of the questions that the audience have posed. So, okay, let's jump in. Let's see what we got here. Let's see what we got first. Okay. Oh, this is a good one. How can I stand out from the noise? What say you, Brenda?
Yeah, and not only the noise, but attention spans are minuscule. I
Right?
think it used to be, right? It used to be a minute. Now it's down to 30 seconds or 15 seconds. You get about 15 seconds, right?
Yep.
To grab someone's attention. It's interesting. There's just been a sea change, as part of this pandemic.
Mhm.
And I've always been a believer in authenticity,
Mm.
right? And I think that's more important now than ever. It used to be more about flash, think Kardashian, just to
Yep.
get someone's attention. But you really need that follow through, you need that credibility.
Mhm.
So I think having authentic voice is really important. Not only because that's what stands out now,
Right.
right? Is people
Mhm.
are looking for sincerity and truth. Um, and there's a lot of skepticism, rightly so, as a result of the news media this year. We've been in an election cycle,
Yeah.
to say the least.
Mhm.
So I think that you have very little time to grab someone's attention, but once you do now, you have to hold it with authenticity. That's so important.
Okay, this is kind of unrelated. Well, it's related. Is there a time of year that's quiet? Like, is there a time of year that if someone wanted to do a launch and kind of, still stand out from the noise, but have less competition? I'm not exactly sure if that's a thing in your world.
It is. And it used to be that the holiday season towards the end of the year was a blackout period. Don't do launches, nobody's around, but we all work from home now, right?
Hmm.
And people aren't vacationing. Maybe they're taking, small jaunts, to the country for a few days, or,
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, or they're getting a, Airbnb somewhere for a week, but they're still working. So actually, the reverse is now true. To do a launch mid-December or the third week of December is really a great time to do it now because there's not as many people launching and people's attention is there.
Hmm.
If anything, a lot of people have more time on their hands to look and, look at what your company is doing and attend a webinar in December in those typically quiet months.
Hmm.
For instance, this week we were just chatting about CES, right?
Yeah.
And it's virtual this year, and I've advised some clients of mine had wanted to go out and launch this week, and I advised them not to
Hmm.
because even though CES is virtual, it's still CES.
Hmm.
But it's looking like maybe it wasn't such an attention getter, this
Hmm.
week. So we're all learning.
Yeah, I think also it's interesting with how with PR especially, you have to really like be mindful of the news cycle, and the news
Mhm.
cycle over the past, I mean, for 2020, the news cycle was a roller coaster. So
Yeah.
you never knew what was going to hit next. If you think it could be a quiet day, and then it was the biggest spike of coronavirus in this place, and everyone was covering it.
Right.
So it's so unexpected. Um, is there in your experience for something like that, say that you were going to have a client that was going to launch, say tomorrow, and then tomorrow the news was something crazy happened in the news.
Mhm.
What do you do in terms of pivoting when something like that happens, when you have a planned launch on the same day?
I do launches in stages now. So
Smart.
instead of, one planned day and a full force show throughout the day, we'll do it in 3-week phases. We'll
Mm-hmm.
start with, pre-briefings with specialized press, friendlies press, who will get the story out there. And then we'll pivot off of that and piggyback on that with a social media digital campaign,
Mm-hmm.
and then partnerships and webinars. So that way you're not corralled into the one day formulaic,
Mm-hmm.
this is the day we're launching, because the news, and I was a former newspaper reporter, the news has been so unpredictable. And
Mm-hmm.
not only that, this year there's been a lot of news, and it's been actually quite advantageous for public relations, because there's a lot of stories trending that normally wouldn't trend, that you can pivot from,
Right.
or piggyback off of.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my answer to that. And the other one thing I'd like to cover is I'm considered a specialist in crisis communication,
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm.
I've done quite a bit of that. And I've noticed that a lot of the principles around crisis communication, it used to be that we'd write a plan just in case, in case of crisis, break glass.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that a lot of the elements of a crisis communication program are now generalized parts of a regular PR program, because of the very point you made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I know for sure it's part of my strategy on the digital side.
Yeah.
We have, I mean, when we were working in the actual our brick and mortar agency, we had a monitor going with news all the time, because you never know if something was going to happen. Or when we have different programs that we do that follow trends and follow what's that trending hashtag and story and all that kind of stuff. And we learned very quickly how fast the news cycle started to move once
Yes.
coronavirus hit in that last year. And it's just amazing. I mean, I could literally be. I was talking to somebody, I think in one of our previous episodes, and I was on conference calls during a big news story hit, and I had no idea that the news story was hitting, and it was really affecting a lot of people. And
Yeah.
a client of mine said, "Hey, can we go dark on social media for the next 72 hours?" And I'm like, "What the hell's going on?"
Wow.
And and then I looked and I was like, "Oh my God, something big is happening right now." So you have to be really, really on your toes at this
Yes.
point. So we've
Yeah,
been
you have to expect the unexpected. And I mean, I'll give you a crazy example. I wrote the crisis communication handbook for Domino's Pizza.
okay.
And I mean, it was so granular. We had next steps, what to do if the media calls you if someone choked on a mushroom. I mean, it was just incredibly granular. And at the time, it seemed, over the top. But it was one of those things, like I said, it's a fire extinguisher and down the hall in case a fire breaks out.
Mhm.
But you have to kind of have that mindset now, just like the great, story you just told. You're
Mhm.
on a conference call and then something crazy happens. And it's just, I think it's going to get crazier.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful for my experience in a daily newspaper room, a daily newsroom,
Yeah.
because it's the same type of, environment where something could come flying through a window, and you just expect that it could happen any minute. And, you have to take advantage of it, and you have to evaluate it quickly, right?
Mhm.
Plan for it.
Right. So, what another question for you? What's the best way to make yourself a thought leader in your industry?
Getting back to that authentic voice,
Yeah.
that's important, but also being reliable. And I
Mhm.
noticed that the press will always go to those same sources that have had an authentic voice, a
Mhm.
credible voice, and have been reliable. Those are the three keys to being a thought leader.
Mhm.
To engage with the media, and not only when it's to your advantage, right?
Right.
Interact with them on social,
Mhm.
comment on their pieces, add and offer insight to their reporting, That makes you stand out.
Mhm.
And also, being available when they need a source is really important too.
Mhm.
I've noticed a real difference with clients who are willing and ready to drop anything to talk to a reporter and those who aren't. And the
Oh, yeah.
reporters, they never forget that. They will, the next time they do a story, you'll be the first one they call because they know that you will provide great comment, will be insightful, and reliable, and your voice is authentic.
And I think a really good example of that is I was working with another agency, and they were we were, how when we all get together, we commiserate and we share stories. And they were telling me a story of and a client who they were trying to make into a thought leader. And every time they got a press opportunity that they presented to the client,
Mhm.
they either responded 24 hours later to that inquiry, or they said, this doesn't seem like a good fit.
Yeah.
And here's what I say to that: get your ass in gear. If someone wants to talk to you, find an angle,
Yes.
find your expertise,
Yeah.
reach
And I'm
outside.
going to actually add some super top secret tip here
Yeah,
that I would
go
never
for
share anywhere else but on your show
it.
because you're so lovely and so wonderful.
No, thank you.
Um, I was a political newspaper reporter. So I know how politicians are trained to work with the media. And this is the best tip I ever got. And I transferred this to the corporate world.
Hmm.
No matter what question is asked, you answer with your positioning statement.
Hmm.
So even if on the surface it doesn't seem like a good fit, you still answer with, your positioning, right? Your branding. And I'll give you an example.
Hmm.
And reporters appreciate this too, and bloggers as well. They're looking for different ideas.
Hmm.
And don't be shy about giving your opinion and say, I understand you want to cover this and that you want to write about this. However, did you consider X?
Hmm.
Right? And I've seen so many reporters totally scrap their story
Hmm.
and change the angle and rewrite it, in
Hmm.
support of that company's branding and positioning because of that.
Yeah, that's
So
a
that,
good tip.
yeah, it's a knee-jerk reaction to say, well, this isn't in our wheelhouse, right? And I do get that from clients, and I counsel them. I say, well, you're the expert here. You should be advising the reporter that, there are other considerations,
Hmm.
right, to be covered in the
Yep.
story. And I do that as well.
Hmm.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful advice because there are, I mean, let's be honest, for myself personally, when I get any sort of media requests, sometimes it's not necessarily something that it's 100% in my wheelhouse, but
Right.
I understand how that directly relates to something in my wheelhouse.
Hmm.
So I try to present those angles, and you're right.
Right.
When you do that, whether
Sure.
they come back and use you for that story or they come directly back and just use you and interview you for
Right.
the story on that topic, it's
Hmm.
it's pretty amazing. And I
And
think
I've had instances, and I know because I know how publishing works,
mhm,
is if it's compelling enough, they'll write a sidebar to their story.
mhm,
Like, here's what we covered, but this is also something to consider. And actually, that's better positioning for your brand
for sure.
because, it's highlighted as a sidebar story. And I've had clients do that as well.
Yeah, and I think that it's really important if you're trying to become a thought leader or position yourself as an expert that
Mhm.
you answer every media inquiry that you're given by your PR
Yes.
company. I think it's,
Yes.
there's for me, sometimes I will be asked to do case studies where I have to name my clients and do screenshots of their campaigns, and I'm not comfortable with that. But
Mhm.
I aside from that, I will talk about anything. And if someone sends me a media request, I'm going to answer it within an hour if I possibly can.
Yeah.
And it's a discipline that you have to have, but if you are going to engage a PR company, you need to understand that you need to be ready to get off your ass and do the work because they're getting you the
That's right.
opportunity, and
Right.
they're basically handing it over on a plate. All you got to do is answer it.
That's right.
All you got to do is answer it. And 3 points about this. And if you are going to hem and haw and, oh, I don't know, and I'm one of these people that likes to mill over my answers for a
Yes.
couple of days, why don't you hold off on PR for a little while until
Right.
you're able to really take advantage? Because this is, I don't know if I'm like telling tales out of school, but clients that are like that tend to be the ones that complain about not getting any coverage. Am I
Right.
right?
Yes. Yes, it's true. Yeah. And there are ways to get around it. And I'm always going to recommend that you go with a PR agency that's got newspaper background because,
Mm-hmm.
good solid writer, people that have been in that environment, we can take some comments that you've made in the past and we can rewrite them for the story. All we need is your sign off. So there's never anything lost, right? And any comments that you prepare or send to us, they can always be reused and repurposed, right? For social
Mm-hmm.
media, for blogs, byline articles. So it's always to your advantage to try to answer. And when you think about it, the press are the people who have their finger on the pulse
Mm-hmm.
of what's happening. So if they're asking these questions, and you don't feel prepared or that you don't feel that you can answer, you have to ask yourself why that is.
Mm-hmm.
Because, they're serving their audience, which vicariously is, prospects and customers of yours, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really good, like canary in the coal mine.
Yeah.
Press are really good at, seeing which way maybe you should be pivoting your marketing or positioning to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Um, okay, so let's talk about the ROI. Because there's nothing more than I love talking to on an initial call with a prospective client than ROI.
Yeah,
Um, because obviously we have to tell them that there's many different factors at play. And
right.
no one likes to hear that. But is there okay, how would you answer a client, a prospective client or a client that would say this to you? Is there any way I can get more leads through PR?
Yes. PR people don't like this question. They don't like to say yes.
Nobody
I'm
does.
one of the few that does. I've been in a position early on where I work with tech startups
Mm-hmm.
that have no money, very lean, and they need to eke out every dollar they spend everywhere for maximum results.
Yeah.
And because I've been doing this for so long, I've seen a pattern of certain placements that drive qualified leads in certain publications. And I know what those publications are. So what I'll do is I'll just be laser focused on those one or two publications for getting placements, and they will see a hockey stick. They'll see their leads, their qualified leads go up, and it does have a direct impact.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really important to work with smart people like you on the digital side to complement that,
Yeah.
right? Because you can only get so much mileage and steam out of a placement, but
Mhm.
the way you just really magnify that through digital campaigns and social media, it's really important. But yeah,
Yeah.
there are certain activities you can take that will drive significant qualified leads, and awards are a very key
Yes.
driver of that as well. Yep.
Mhm.
And we like to call it window dressing. You go to a website or you go to a social media page and you see all these awards and think, wow, they must be doing something right. They're getting all these awards. So that can really help qualify leads too.
Yeah, and I think that, it's interesting because a lot of people don't think that PR, well, number one, I don't think a lot of people believe that all PR firms do social media as well, or the digital side of things.
Yeah.
And that isn't always the case. And
Right.
sometimes, what I saw was when I started my agency, like over a decade ago, it was PR firms were seeing national PR firms were seeing that social media was a big thing. So they were just hiring college students and then saying that they were offering as a service.
Oh,
And they didn't
yeah.
really necessarily understand how any of it worked because guess what? Nobody really did. We were all
Right.
figuring it out at the same time. But because it was a firm with a really reputable name, I'm going to go to you for your social media first because you do everything else so wonderfully. And what's kind of shaken out over time is that PR firms do PR really well, and digital
Right,
firms do digital really well.
right.
So this is something that I believe, and that's why I love partnering with PR firms on campaigns, because it's seamless. You know,
Yes.
it's
Mhm.
there's it and I think a lot of people, and I mean, I'm speaking for myself. I'm hoping other digital marketers aren't assholes and don't think that this isn't true, but I like working with PR agencies because we can feed off one another. I can say these are the results that we're getting from this target
Yes.
audience. Maybe this is something that could be a lead for you. Or you could be saying, hey, these are the lifestyle publications that I'm going to be aiming for, or these are the
Yeah.
tech, and then I can go in and you could say, here's the tear sheet for the readership. And then I can
Right.
take that and put that into their advertising on social or whatever. So it's like it's a simpatico relationship, and it really does
Mhm.
tell the full story. Um, and especially with lead generation, one of the
Yep.
things too, the digital component is where those leads going to be captured. So if you're using in your byline is, your website and your phone number, who's answering that phone, and does your website look like a piece of shit, or is it a conversion ready?
Right.
And those are two big things as well. Especially, I think this is something that hampers down a lot of startups that have so many like plates spinning on sticks.
Mhm.
Um, and but something just to kind of throw out there as a plus for everyone listening, if you are going to engage a PR company or a digital marketing company, you really should make sure that you're looking at your website first to make sure that
Yes.
it is a credible looking website. And guess what? If you're looking at it and you think that it's credible, get a second opinion. Get a second opinion.
Yes.
I'm paid to tell people the truth.
That's right.
So
Yes. So important.
and that's exactly what Brenda and I do when we're doing consultations with clients.
Right.
We're not doing it's funny because sometimes, Brenda, I feel like I'm doing a shakedown, and
That's right.
I was like, hey, I said,
I'm comfortable with that. You're from what? You're from Pittsburgh. I'm from Detroit.
yeah, and it's kind of like, yeah, that's great. So what's the truth though?
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but it's
Because and I tell people, I say, and this is a very Detroit thing. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. The easy way is you tell me. The hard way is the press will always find out the truth, right?
Mhm.
And it's easier to tell me right up front. I mean, I'll give you an example. We were tapped by Tinder to do a launch, to a major launch
Mhm.
in September of last year,
Mhm.
and it was a pivot. They were going into the film industry, movie production. Um,
Okay.
yeah, and it was so important. And they had everything in place, but the one thing they could not find was someone who had the relationships with the key top tier one ABC networks in New York. And when they found me and they hired our team, they said they could not find anyone who did media relations that that had this. Yeah, I was a little surprised.
Yeah.
And I think it might be that there are certain fields and trades that are like crafts
Mhm.
that are a lost art a little bit. So we put them in front of every major tier one network and news outlet in New York, AP, Reuters. They were very happy. The CEO, it was all CEO driven, and they had a very successful launch. But what happened was there was a spy on one of the movie sets, and they had signed a binding contract that they wouldn't talk about. Well, they went to the media, they went to Reuters,
Oh.
and they spilled the beans about what was going on and what Tinder was doing. And Reuters called me and they said they were going to run the story,
Oh,
right?
wow.
And there was total panic. So this is what I mean, that the crisis communication elements come into even just, we
Mhm.
were hired for simple media relations, set up these appointments, and we're a go.
Mhm.
So, we were able to manage that and negotiate, and especially when the press know that you're a former newspaper reporter, they're less likely,
Yeah.
right, to try to um, manipulate you.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to manage through that, and the story was delayed. I negotiated to at least delay the story after the launch, and everything was okay. But it is an art,
Yeah.
it really kind of is an art. And it's a very specialized uh, art, media relations.
I think it really is. And I think that I always like to try to give advice without being self-righteous, but if I'm self-righteous, whatever. Um, it,
Yeah,
I think that if you are a client and you are engaging an agency, especially for PR, but also for digital, you should really be honest completely down to the ground about everything. And
right.
I think it's also good to obviously if you're squeaky clean and you have nothing to worry about, obviously that's easy to be honest, but be honest also with what goals that you're looking for and what you're expecting out of the
Yes.
campaign. Because
Expectations are really important.
yeah, it's really important because and I say this all the time, and this is just, I mean, everyone that's listening to this is probably tired of hearing this, but the number one thing that prospective clients will ask me when it comes to a digital social media campaign is that I want a lot of visibility. Visibility and credibility are the number one things that I'm looking for on social media.
Mm,
And I always say, wonderful, you got it. And I build their campaign in a phase one, phase two. And the phase one is all about credibility and visibility. But I'm already building phase two, which is lead generation, because
that's right.
branding and visibility in my world is Chinese food. And in 30 minutes, you're hungry. So
Yes.
I have to give them a steak. So I put the steak underneath the Chinese food, serve it up to them,
I love
so they're covered. But this is one of the things too.
Yes.
If you're looking for more business, you can be upfront about that with agencies, because
Yes.
then we can see, okay, well, this is what you're going to be looking at. So these are the metrics that I have to be playing with, and these are the types of things that I'm going to be going for. But
Right.
if it's kind of like, I just want visibility, yeah, visibility all day long. But then
Yeah.
when it's like, hey, this is great, you've got me some great coverage, but I'm not getting any business out of this. And it's like, oh, well, you never said that you wanted business. And then the next thing that said is, oh, well, that's just implied.
Yeah.
I was like,
It's
oh, you
OIV is right. Yeah. And I hate to say this on the show, but I'm going to do it because we're good friends. It's like this would be a great business if it weren't for clients, and that's usually that's usually something that's
Mm,
talked about amongst agency people. But the reason why it's funny to us
mm,
is because we've had our share of clients who I mean, I've had calls like, well, when am I going to be on the cover of Time magazine? Right. And I literally have gotten clients on the cover of New York Times. Like I am a person who can do this,
mhm.
um, which is somewhat rare. And I
Yeah.
still tell them, I say, well, I joke around. I say, well, you either have to kill someone, or and we don't want that. But it's a learning process, right? So I see so much of my role as an educator too, just like you do,
Yeah.
about how you're already building in, the steak under the Chinese food because you're anticipating this.
Hmm.
And I love to teach, and I love to mentor, and learn and grow the client.
Hmm.
I think that's really important.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that, when in our world, the ideal client is somebody who is honest, that is knows what
Hmm.
they want to
Right.
achieve, and
Yeah.
understands and is open to understanding and learning about the
Yeah.
process. And I think that
That's true.
that is the best, because then we're able to pivot, we're able to organically move through
Yeah.
things, we're able to stop at any point and explain something with an
Yeah.
and it's kind of, they have an open mind, so they can kind of go, oh, I see what you're trying to
Right.
do here.
And I've been on board of directors. I've been a corporate officer of multinational companies. I've grown a company from 100,000 to 100 million in 7 years. One of the most successful startups in tech, and we were, entrepreneur of the year nationally. So I understand. I understand what your fears are, what your needs are,
Mhm.
you know, but this is what's really important is a 10,000-foot view goes a long way, right, towards
Mhm.
strategizing and planning. So a lot of companies I work with, the ones who are most successful, they know who and what they want to be 3 years out, 5 years out, and they're upfront and honest with me about it.
Yep.
For instance, I work with I launched a chain block company that did healthcare on Bitcoin.
Okay. Mhm.
And they were very upfront with me. The guy was like 20 years old. He's a maverick entrepreneur in New York. And, he had companies like CVS, wanting to buy them. And he said, I want to sell this company in 3 months. I don't want to even, I want to walk away. And sure enough, I got them in US News and World Report and a few other tier one magazines. And they got the attention of a Chinese investor who bought them for 100 million cash, and he walked away.
Wow.
So I think that's what's really important. And going back to how you kicked off our conversation
Yeah.
is about being honest,
Mm.
right? And so I was able to tailor a program for that business result, right?
Mhm.
And it's not always going to be, PR is not just a hot button to success by
Yeah.
any means, right? But when you're upfront and honest with the people you're working with, doesn't matter if it's, product design or marketing, your results will be better.
And something else too, this is something that I've kind of seen, kind of like a misconception about PR that I've had to explain to some people, but I'm curious if you've seen this before in your experience. I'm sure you might have. People coming to you as a PR expert in order to create their identity and
Mm,
to they don't know how to express themselves. They don't know who they are really. And it's
mm,
almost like they're having an identity crisis and they're turning to you to fix that.
yeah. Um, that's a tough one.
Hmm.
Only because, I used to say the press, but now I should say everyone. Everyone is the press. Social media has made everyone a news person.
Yep.
And I used to be able to kind of stitch that together, but now you can't because people are savvier, they're more sophisticated. Audiences can ferret out things faster.
Yep.
And if you don't know who your true authentic self is, that will show.
Yes.
Yes. So I used to be able to cloak that somewhat.
Hmm.
I'll give you an example. I I nearly had a heart attack. I did my best to, of course, create the best optics for a software company that I was a board member for, and I went to a very important party. Bill Gates was there, all of them,
Hmm.
and the editor of the most powerful magazine at the time came up to me and he said, honey, he said, I really adore you, but your boss is an asshole. So if you're ever looking, let me know. Bill Gates is looking for a PR person. And I just thanked him and I pivoted off to the side of the room and I thought, how am I going to fix this? They can see it, that the guy is a jerk, right? A brilliant guy, you know. But and this was before Steve Jobs, right? And everybody knew that he was, well, people in our industry in tech, he's an asshole, but he was a brilliant asshole.
Yeah.
So they'd forgive that. But yeah, that was interesting, right? So, but that was his true authentic self, right?
Hmm.
And I was trying to cloak that a bit. And so what I did was we went back and we pivoted a bit and we basically he was a brilliant guy, brilliant programmer, but we removed him from interfacing with the media. We
Yeah.
just had to.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Some
that's
things you just can't fix, right? Well,
yeah,
that was a way to fix it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we do this. We tend to do the same thing in terms of uh, uh, spokes trying to use a spokesperson if we're using one to go
Mhm.
out on social. We tend to interview the people that the company will provide, and after we can talk to both of them, we understand which one is going to be the most personable and open to opportunities, as
Yeah.
opposed to being kind of thumbing their nose at everything that comes their way, rather than seeing the opportunity in it.
Right. Yes.
And so I could totally understand that. Um, Another thing is this question. Okay, this is another one that drives me crazy. But and I want everyone to understand that's listening to this. It drives us crazy because it's really frustrating because we want everybody to understand how this works, how the wheel works, and we
Right.
just really want everyone to understand it because it's kind of like it's a language that we know really well, and we don't expect everybody to know it, but we kind of think that maybe someone would have gleaned something or did some research to understand it. But regardless of that, another question for you, Brenda, is how fast can I expect to see traction from a PR campaign? Is that going to be next week, right?
Yeah, yesterday.
I
Yeah,
was gonna. Are you gonna
and
get me on the cover of? Are you gonna get me on the Today Show? I want to be on next week.
right. Yes, Oprah. Well, it used to be Oprah.
It used to be
That's right.
Oprah, yeah, or Oprah's
Yeah,
Book Club, or
Dr.
Oprah
Phil.
Magazine. My favorite
Yeah,
things.
right. You know, it's interesting because we kind of kicked off the call offline about this. Um, it's it depends on how engaged you are, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I've seen there is a real difference working with executives who are just Johnny on the spot or Jill on the spot with press call, and they get more momentum, they get more traction, they get more leads, they get more notice, they get everything. They get everything, and they're passionate. And those who are passionate. So it takes two to tango, to
yeah,
use an old worn out phrase. I used to say I can set up the bowling pins for you, but you have to have the ball in your hand and roll it down. You know, might be a gutter ball occasionally, but at least you're out there,
hmm
and you're trying. You don't win unless you participate. So participation is real important.
and I think also, in terms of how fast you can expect traction, this is where it's really good to have an integrated marketing
Hmm.
strategy,
Yes.
because if you're using PR for everything, and then it's like, okay, well, phase one, I'm only gonna do PR. Phase two, I'm only going to do digital. Phase three, I
Yeah.
mean, this isn't like 1993. I mean, it's like this is not
Right.
how it works.
They're all
So
legs of a stool, and if you don't have one of the legs, you'll fall over.
absolutely,
Um, yeah. So how fast? I mean, it could happen in a week, right? If you're committed and passionate, and engaged. Um, and we've gotten so in public relations in our field that we can be really granular about how we're going to phase into a launch or into notoriety, and attention for you. And I've actually found that most people don't want to move so fast, right? They
right.
want to ease into things. Um, and I'm always really clear, and communication is so important, letting them know what to expect and when to expect it. I'm a big believer in timelines, and with the caveat of this could slide or
Right.
this could, pivot a bit.
Mhm.
But I think it's really important to be able to throttle that type of attention, because I've actually been in situations where I launched a product, and 3 months later they won best of show at the biggest convention in the world,
Mhm.
and they simply weren't prepared for it on the back end in terms of logistics. I mean, in terms of everything.
Right.
So these are real important things to consider, and this goes back to sharing that 10,000-foot view
Mhm.
with the people that are your partners, like yourself and PR people.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And just to even like from my own experience, when I've hired PR firms in the past to do campaigns for me, it could be that I would get featured. I would get a Forbes interview in week one, and then I wouldn't get
Hmm.
anything for 4 months. And then 4 months, I get Inc., an entrepreneur, or Fast Company, or
Yeah.
Ad Age, or something. And it's like those are all massive hits, but they didn't all happen boom, 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 boom off the bat.
Right.
It was the relationship of the PR person that helped get that placement
Yes.
initially so
Yeah.
fast. And I understood that, and I don't give a shit. I love the placement. And I mean, I'm in. Forbes, I'm in, but the rest of them took time. And what did happen between then and the first placement and then the second one? I
Right.
answered maybe like 50 or 60 media inquiries. I had
Yes.
phone interviews with journalists.
Yeah.
I tried, and guess what? I talked to all of those people that placed me early for unrelated articles, but I was kind, I was prompt, I was there
Yes.
when they called me. I didn't waste their time.
Right.
I was really dense with information, and
Mhm.
I I was prepped.
Yes.
My PR person told me exactly what kind of, these are the things, and this is how you should do it. This is
And
how
there's
they did.
another type of PR that takes that to the next level. And I'll give you an example.
Yes.
Most PR people are reactive, right? They wait for an opportunity. They'll look at their vendor programs and look for stories that reporters are writing. And if you're a fit, it's very reactive. When you get a really good PR person who has newsroom experience, they will create those opportunities for
Yep.
you. And I'll give you an example. I have a client that does ransomware protection in the
Okay.
security space.
Mhm.
And because of my newspaper background, I was thinking, you know what? These bad guys are probably going to try to take down some of these pharma companies that are working on a vaccine.
Right.
This could be bad. And my client prevents this.
Mhm.
So it really does come from a very high level altruistic place where
Mhm.
I'm thinking to myself, where could these bad operators move next?
Right.
So I called up my buddy at CNBC and I said, you know, everyone's writing, all of your colleagues are writing about, pandemic. This was in April. And they're writing about how businesses are coping. I said, you know what's going to happen next? One of these bad operators is going to try to take down a Lilly,
Mhm.
or a Pfizer
Yeah.
with ransomware. And then the whole world is going to be in a very bad place. And he says, oh my gosh, I didn't think of that. I'm going to write a story about that.
Mhm.
So we created this opportunity. And of course, our client was quoted extensively throughout the story in May, and it led to other stories.
Mhm.
So all the other press jumped on the bandwagon. So that really is, next what I call next level public relations.
Something else I want to add into that we were kind of touching on. This is kind of like an offshoot. Sometimes the placements in these holy grail type publications or even television shows are not the be all and end all of
Right.
results. And this is something that I've seen over the years. I've seen very clearly over the years. I mean, I've had tons of clients that have been on the Today Show, Good Morning America. They've been
Yeah.
featured in Oprah's Favorite Things list. They've been in
Right.
Martha Stewart magazine. They've been in all of these places where and I mean, how many of them have been in gift lists? Like all of them.
Mhm.
They don't it's like a windfall for a very short period of time, and
Right.
it's kind of, that's your wave. So it's sometimes it's those aren't the best places.
Right.
Maybe those audiences are not as super engaged as you believe they are based off
Uh,
of the branding and the brand name associated with it.
Right. Yeah. I got a placement like that once, and I went and I talked to the director of sales, and I said, it was a huge PR win, huge corporate win. And I said, "Did you get any calls on that?" He says, "Not one." So, and I call it surround sound PR.
Yes.
Every everywhere you turn, you should see or hear about your company.
Yep.
So it comes from the ground up, it comes from the bottom down, it comes from the sides. It's like um the surround sound effect. So, you should be, targeting those, Uber to tier one publications. But there's also, for instance, getting back to the pharmaceutical ransomware, CNBC ran that story, but there's all these vertical
Hmm.
publications and outlets that go straight to hospital executives,
Yes.
who are running healthcare organizations, and they will more likely read about it in their pubs than they would necessarily see it on CNBC. So, you really need to get that echo effect going.
Yeah, and I mean, also, even if you're thinking about like one of the big things that we were dealing with a lot over the holiday season, the fourth quarter, was making it really amplifying placements in Christmas lists. And
Mm,
um, and there's Christmas lists on every publication and every different show and every
Right.
every syndicated show. And I remember one client had a major placement in The View, and they were really excited about it. And no, they were excited about getting into it. And I was saying to them, I said, this is exciting, but you paid for this placement. So it was a paid placement. So how are we going to look at how that is going to create an ROI? What did you get off the back of it? And it wasn't
Right.
anything worth it, because
Uh,
if
yeah.
I'm watching, I don't want to, I've been in The View. Let's just say it's the example. I'm not watching it for gift ideas. I don't
Right.
know about you. I don't know.
Yes. Right. I'll give you another example. I used to do product placement in Hollywood with Hollywood films. I have a
Mhm.
lot of friends in the film industry. I'm originally from LA. And
Well, you were in a few yourself.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's kind of like a nice thing, right? But
Mhm.
it's not necessarily going to drive sales or visibility. For instance, during the Seinfeld days, I had a friend that worked on the set, and they go, we're always looking for props. You have some software boxes we can throw on desks, and sure enough, people who already knew about us saw it and thought it was really cool.
Mhm.
But and I worked a lot with Paramount and MGM Studios, and I did a lot with uh, a different independent studios too, and getting product placements,
Yeah.
computers. A lot of times they'll need computers on desks and laptops and,
Mhm.
or cell phone. But, it doesn't make a campaign, right? It's just another flavor of building visibility that's multi-layered. And I would never pay for them,
Mm,
right? If
yeah.
it was something that, like The View was pay
Mhm.
for play.
Yeah.
You know, if you're willing to give product, that's one thing, but I would never pay. Mm-mm.
No, I don't really feel like the return is there. And I also feel like with paid placements sometimes that they're they're just investing in the show's production. So it just doesn't feel
Yes.
it doesn't feel like they are given the same sort of respect as another segment would be.
Right.
But moving on, another thing, one of the last questions I have for you, Brenda, is from the audience said, how do I know I've got a solid PR program in terms of deliverables?
Yeah.
Question mark.
This is kind of that space and time continuum, right? Question again about how fast can I get notoriety and how do I, measure deliverables. I think what's really important is, for both parties to understand what the goals are and the expectations
Right.
within that 10,000-foot view. So some things you really can't measure. There are some, there's a lot of companies that will ask for KPIs.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you can reasonably say that you get this many guest articles or guest columns and, placements. But really, what you need to look at are what are your business goals? You know, uh, what are you trying to achieve? And
Right.
going back to that example of the young entrepreneur who said, 3 months, I want to sell this and walk away.
Mm-hmm.
How do you work backward from that 10,000-foot view and deliver that? And there are no guarantees, right? As you know, but when all of the moving pieces are working together, the odds are that the deliverables will be met, within, 60 to 80% probability.
Right.
That's been my experience. And I think it's important to be realistic, right? There is a lot of science behind what we do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And a lot of it's proven, but there's also a magic element to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you an example. I'm good friends with Steve Wozniak.
Mm-hmm.
Just never really worked with him before, but we're connected.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a client that was launching one of the first telemedicine platforms.
Okay.
And it just so happened that at their major conference, Steve Wozniak was giving the keynote. Go figure.
Oh my gosh.
Right. I mean, it was just happenstance. So, I called him up. I said, hey, Steve, I've got two doctors, clients that are launching telemedicine. And he got all excited. And he's like, oh, I think that's the future. And I'd love to meet with them. So I set up a lunch in San Francisco. And never made any promises. They just had a really nice lunch. We didn't ask him to do anything, and he got up on stage. It's being beamed all over the world. And then he gets all excited and he says, I just had lunch with these people and they're doing these amazing things.
Oh,
And it's
wow.
Cook Care. I'm gonna sign up and you should too.
Oh, wow.
And so there are those magic moments.
Yeah.
And you know, as much as you want to talk about structure and deliverables and expectations and strategies, there's still that little, bluebird chance that things like that happen. So it goes back to your saying about being open-minded.
Hmm.
So important.
It is. It's so funny because this same thing happened to us recently. I think it was end of November. Who gives a shit? It was November, December, and we weren't actively reaching out to influencers for one of our clients because of the time of year, and it was just everybody was already booked up because even with influencer marketing, you kind of have to go ahead of the holiday season because they kind of book out a lot of their spots. So we wanted to use the advertising dollars in a different way. Regardless, out of the blue, because we were doing the marketing, we had high visibility for the client. Um, this the hairdresser who works exclusively with Kim Kardashian, Christy Teigen, and I mean, like a whole bunch of other mega
Yeah.
influencer accounts. She was like, "Hey, I was wondering if we could get some copies of your product to put in my gift baskets." And obviously
See?
we were like, well, yeah. I was kind of like, I saw it and I was like, humana, 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 humana. How can I get on this quickly? What can I
Right.
do? What can I do? How can I make this
Yes.
bigger? How can I explode this? What can I do to amp this up? So
Yes.
I asked if we could do any sort of shout out, but they were kind of like, no. And it's like, well, who are these going to be going to? And she's like, only my celebrity clients. I'm going to put you on with my assistant and he can help you out. And I said, okay, wonderful. So I was still working with the assistant. He gave me the list of the people that they were going to go to.
Yeah.
I was like, shit,
Yes.
send them five
Yes.
of each
Anything they
now.
want. Right.
Anything you want.
Influence the influencer. Yeah.
And that one influencer had 7.1 million followers on
Yes.
Instagram,
Yes.
and the connections that they had over, like, I think 100 million.
Yeah, it's that echo effect, right?
Yeah.
The surround sound, right? Or a lot of times I say, if you drop that one stone into the pond, the ripple effect, it just goes everywhere.
And they would never have had that if we weren't amplifying their message. Now,
Mhm.
is it because of that they saw it? Yes, that's why.
Yes.
But
Hmm.
and if they didn't, they wouldn't have had that opportunity.
Right. And the very same with the client. This wasn't PR related, but they said, we're going to be exhibiting. They let me know. That was so important. They said, Brenda, just so you know, we're going to be going to our conference. I didn't know. I'd never heard of this conference. It's our annual conference and, healthcare IT, and it sounded all so boring. And then I looked it up and I'm like, oh, Steve is keynoting, well, let's
Mhm.
see what we can do. I'll call him up. But yeah, serendipity, right?
Yeah, that's great.
Being open
It's
and
great.
yeah, and amplifying, being everywhere. Like I said, everywhere you turn, right?
And also whenever I start a campaign for a client, I'd say that there's going to be unexpected things that happen, whether good or bad,
Mhm.
and there's going to be
Yep.
things that you can expect, but there's going to be things that are going to be completely unexpected that we're going to come across, and we can't expect those things to happen again. But if they if they happen once, hey, let's take advantage of them as much as we possibly can. Um,
Exactly.
so, Brenda, thank you so much for being on our show. I think we had a really fantastic discussion. I think you helped really clear up a lot of the misnomers in terms of PR. Where can people learn more about your agency?
Well, we're a true social agency. We don't even have a website. We're on Facebook under Stellar Public Relations. So it's Facebook Stellar PR, and you can find us there.
Excellent. And I'll put a link to that in the description of our show so
Thank
that you
you.
all can check that out. Thanks again, Brenda, for chatting with us today.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. In upcoming episodes of the Social Marketing Academy, we have a slew of experts lined up. So keep your eye on our social media feed for just kind of insights as to who they are, so you can come up with some questions that you can send over directly. If you haven't already subscribed to our podcast, get on it. It's on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast. If you go into the App Store and say podcast, and the player will be in there. So just do that. Also, we do live feeds of this as well. So there is a video feed. If you want to see all past episodes, go to our YouTube page as well as our Facebook page. All of the links to this can be found on my website for my agency, digital marketing agency, the Go Agency. It's gosalesandmarketing.com. Again, that's gosalesandmarketing.com. And click on the social links in the right-hand corner. You'll figure it out. You're a smart bunch. And while you're there, again, like I said, there's a pop-up with a free e-course, Defining Your Social Media Edge. Why the hell not? It's free. Go for it. And then we have a blog page. And on the blog page are lots of great blogs. I'm saying great because I wrote them. I'm biased, but actually,
I agree.
I write all of we write all of the blogs on that page with you in mind. So we are trying to help you elevate whatever you're doing online in terms of marketing. So it's worth a look if you want to discover some new topics, or kind of just learn another way of doing something that you already know how to do. Everyone's looking for fresh ideas, right? So again, folks, thank you so much for tuning in to the Social Marketing Academy. Again, Christopher Tompkins, your host, and take care. I'll talk to you next time.